Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, to probably the last of the graphic interface ones for a while. Might end up checkering a little bit, but I do have a place to record now with a key. I'm just pooped, man. Just spent the weekend at my friend's place. I've just spent a lot of time in the sun, so I just don't feel like setting up and doing my thing right now. But very, very soon. So I do have a lot of really cool episodes planned. I think so I've done a lot of cerebral stuff with just really there to make you think, and now we're due for some really cool episodes with images and just cool subject matter. So hang in there, they're coming. Some of them are delayed because I have aspirations of doing some 3D myself for one of the episodes, and the other ones I just need to do a ton of research because I have a subject that's great and I just have to go research it out. An example of that would be, I've already done Bermuda Triangle, but when I had to do Bermuda Triangle, I had to go research all the claims that were going on. By the way, if you hear fireworks in the background, that's because it's America and it's July, and it's a very patriotic county around here. So when I go into these other episodes, what I'm really trying to do is to create an emotion for both of us that we both want to have, which is why sort of the current affairs stuff is not my favorite stuff to do. Sometimes I'll do the current affairs stuff simply because it's due. It's like, hey, there's been so much BS injected into society via vehicles, internet basically, that I feel like people need to check some. They need to come back to reality. It's good to take everything in. It's good to consider virtually everything you can hear. Consider it. Think about it. But I want to add another voice at times to sort of maybe dismiss some of the stuff that's just been rumored forever but never ever occurs, but it's designed to terrify you, or to terrorize you, I should say. And it's always good to be prepared for everything, every single thing that can happen to you in your life, right? I told the Patreons this, I'll repeat it here. As an example, a very simple thing, driving to dinner with a friend of mine, driving up the highway, and it's not even the main highway yet. It's the 405 is the big highway that goes all up and down California. This wasn't even on the 405 yet. This is because my journey was to cross over it. Very little traffic, maybe like 5 cars in my sight at this point. But I looked to my left, and thank God this big van was red. I see a woman with another woman in the passenger seat, essentially coming at me like a bullet. She has missed her exit by a mile. There's no way she can get to her exit, even with what she was trying to do. And she has now just decided to pull 3 lanes to the right without even looking. So I see this red van coming at me. I'm in the number, whatever, the last lane on the right. I can't remember how many lanes there are. And I'm probably going, 60, nothing huge. But if she hits me, she's going to hit me in my rear quarter panel, which is going to cause me to most likely flip or have a really bad day. And of course, I'm aware I pull 10 feet to the right, a little bit on the shoulder. She understands that she screwed up. I can see her slam on her brakes. She gets in the middle of this huge island between where she wanted to be and where we're going, with no chance of ever turning around. She didn't want to pay her dues in life. She didn't plan ahead, and she tried to cheat. But she was going to kill myself, my friend, her and her passenger, and it's a van, so God knows who's in the back of the van. Children. I'm sure we're all strapped in our seatbelts, but number one way people get killed in those scenarios is to flip, because your top crushes your head, And stuff happens fast, man. And when you're getting hurled around inside a car, you can't control where your head is. You can't crunch down because you're being slung to the edge of the car. So it's one of those weird moments where nothing happened. I was fast-witted enough and good enough driver to get out of the way. But had I not been, I would have been clipped. And if I hadn't looked to my left, I wouldn't have even seen her. Imagine just getting clipped and you have no clue until you're airborne and you're flipping, right? Be prepared. And being prepared is good. But I expect everyone to be shitty drivers 24/7 because I'm in Los Angeles area, right? So when we go down those sort of negative paths, flip it to a positive that if nothing else, you're getting your brain prepared for maybe something that occurs. But hopefully I'm taking a little bit of steam out of stuff that has been pitched to you as the end of the world. You don't deserve to go to bed feeling like that. And we know that that's what a certain group of people want you to feel every single day. Little microscopic personal things to global things. So when I create the other episodes, hopefully we can find a subject here that's cool. That's what I'm trying to do for both of us. So I thought we might go on. It's sort of a repeat topic I talk about a lot, but I think, I can't remember if I said it just to the Patreons or to you guys, but I've been hearing a lot of spiritual discussions lately out of people that I never would have expected to be spiritual in conversation. I think everyone is spiritual to themselves. You have to be. Even if you end up being an atheist and you think we're just bags of blood and chemicals because you haven't had any experiences to make yourself believe anything different, which I totally get. But lately I have bumped into people that are very similar to myself without ever having the conversation, and they have stories. They have amazing stories that really jostle what you believe. And I'm going to repeat my old classics, but I'm also going to put mine after a buddy of mine who told me a little story. We were in a smoke lounge. It's probably 1 o'clock a.m. We both have keys to this place, so we can stay as long as we want. Because the big question that keeps coming up here is, and it would be interesting to interview someone who has been to some of the classic theaters of war, even the more recent ones in the last 25 years, because when you're in a theater of war, I mean, I have not been in a theater of war, except, the world in the last 5 years. You're in a different location typically in the world, and you're in a situation where life is, being taken by the minute, by the second. People close to you, people on the other side, you're taking lives, that's your job. And when you're in those situations, what life is, I am sure in the minds of those soldiers, is a different calculation. The absolute of why a citizen in a safe world where soldiers have fought for their freedom to give them the right to be righteous, complaining, privileged people. The soldier understands it eventually, at least at some obtuse level where they kind of get it, but maybe they can't put it into words, but they can feel it, right? And you start to, maybe debate the fact that you've heard about the soul in your lifetime. You might believe in the soul simply because you've been told that it exists and it makes sense to you. Deep down inside your heart, it makes sense. You don't even know how to really describe it, but it's in there, right? Once you started adhering to a soul-body-mind connection, which is sort of your guru Hindu format of existence, then you realize you're not just one piece, and the body is just one piece of the three-part system. You don't get the mind without the body, but your soul is this thing. It's your collective intelligence that nothing can touch. A bullet can't touch your soul. A bomb can't touch your soul. A virus can't touch your soul. Nothing can. It is who you are before you take a name in any plane of existence. It is who you are. Now, where it comes from, who gives it to you? Well, we can talk about that, but we don't know. I don't know, at least, right? But the subject of afterlife is huge, because you will have people that watch television, and they'll watch, these really shticky, heavily produced shows where what the people have said on camera is being twisted and turned to aid the overall objective of the show. And then you might talk to a friend of yours or an acquaintance of yours that tells you a third-party story. Well, did you know what they said that happened at this place, right? And that could be very entertaining. I totally recommend you do the campfire stories when they happen, right? But in the end, unless your friend that you really, really trust has a personal experience and they share it with you, it doesn't get any more believable when it's just all third-party accounts. Might seem like it makes sense. There's complete documentaries out there now that are all HD, 16:9, that have tons of super educated people talking about their near-death experiences, meaning they died somehow, went to another plane of existence, had conversations, experienced things, then were told unanimously, and this is like unanimous across time, across cultures, across languages, and just completely different places in the world. They are all told the same thing. If they come back down, it's not your time yet. Come down. You have to go back down. Last 2 times I heard this, 2 degrees away from the source, both gentlemen did totally different accidents. One was in the motorcycle accident. I think one was in a car accident. They both were told they had to come back down, and they were in this state of no pain. And when they went back down, they were back in their bodies that were all banged up. And of course, they went to rehab for a while to rehabilitate their bodies. And they were like, man, I didn't want to come back, especially after I found out what I had to endure. I think both guys made full recoveries. But I'm talking to my friend who's a really intelligent guy, super intelligent, really upper executive guy, but more at the blue collar level like me, meaning he worked managing gigantic department stores. And I told him a few stories, and I'll just tell you one of my stories before I tell you his story, because one story is super quick. The day my grandmother died, on my mother's side, I woke up at 12 o'clock, having stayed up really late working, and I have in my mind's eye my grandmother floating over the bed in her nightgown, which is sort of how I saw her last 10 years of our life, right? And she said, she says, Mark, I just want you to know I'm on the other side and I'm okay. And then at 2:20 that day, my mom calls me sobbing on the phone that her mom had died. And I said, I know, Grandma came and told me. Now, of course, my mom's a very secular Democrat, knows everything, researched nothing kind of person. So she didn't even acknowledge that I had said it. And 10 years later, when I asked her, I said, well, I said this to you and you just blew it off. And still nothing, just a flat line soul in this host that I've got for a mom. It's really fucking weird, dude. Now, my buddy tells me a story. He goes, well, what's weird is he goes, my family has a lot of family in Australia. Not just in Australia, but the centermost part of Australia, which is ironic because I grew up in the centermost part of America. So he's telling me, and this is like the Mad Max filming area, not next to any major city. Hardcore people out there, right? Just like the Midwest, you get these hardcore farmers. So he said that during his years of growing up in this family, there was this pub that was just the place you went and ate. And he said there was a man in there that played this really unique instrument. I can't remember what the name of the instrument is, but he would play this instrument and sing. And he's just a local hero. Nobody seems to know this guy. He doesn't have any record deals that this guy knows of. He's just this local dude. And so fast forward several years, and his mom gets sick. But she is of sound mind and can take visitors in the hospital. It may have been cancer or something, I don't know. But he went in to visit his mom several occasions. This is on the East Coast of America now. I think it's like North or South Carolina. And he said that one of the last visits he had with his mom, I think it's the last visit with his mom, she said, you remember when we used to go to Australia and we used to go to that pub? And that singer, remember that? Wasn't that great? Weren't those like the best times we had together? And he's like, yeah, Mom, you're totally right. That was incredible. That's all it said. So she ends up passing. And very shortly after she passes, he doesn't live there. He lives in California now. So he's going to visit the family at a central location, like a house that somebody owns. And he says he's just tracking to a garage, and he's one of the first people there. So he is in this garage by himself, and he said he just turned a radio on. And it's a local news broadcaster there in the eastern part of America. And this guy said, guys, you know how I usually play this type of music? He goes, something weird happened today. And he goes, I'm just going to do something different here. And he goes, I was walking into the studio today, and he goes, I stumbled on a cassette tape on the ground. So I picked up this cassette tape, And it's got this wild music on it. And I'm just going to play it for you. It's a little banged up, so pardon the soundtrack not playing back perfectly, but he puts this tape in. My buddy's in the garage. So they're in two different locations. One guy's in a radio station. He's in the garage sitting there. And unbelievably, the dude on the tape is the guy in Australia playing that music. And my buddy just sits there and goes, "Hi, Mom." Right? This guy's not a tall tale guy whatsoever. He's completely the opposite kind of dude. I think that's unbelievable. I don't know if I told you, I think I did in one of the other episodes. So remember what I said about my grandmother's last words to me, basically, right? "Mark, I'm on the other side and I'm okay." Well, I have a mechanic in Huntington Beach. He's unable to work on my current car, but he really helped me, one, because he's really busy. But he helped me with an old Chevy I own, right? He likes fixing up old cars. It's cool. My car was not an old car. But since the 2020 medical emergency, this is unrelated to that at all, unrelated to any regiment that might have been handed out, because I believe this happened technically before then. His son in his 20s went to bed, took a nap basically in the afternoon, and never woke up. Devastating. I don't know that he had any injuries. I don't know that he had any concussions from like sports or anything. I don't think he had anything. He just kind of said he had headaches and he was getting tired. And I think he has some sort of stroke or aneurysm perhaps or something. I don't know exactly. So I had brought my new car over and I'm asking if he could just change the oil. Just help me out, change the oil. I'm going to go get other services from another guy. And he said, I'm real busy. And he goes, "Man, I've had a hard time hiring guys that can turn a wrench. They say they can. All they can do is basically change oil, maybe take a tire on and off because it's horrible because I'm backed up 5 months." So, okay, I'm not going to put any pressure. But then he starts talking to me because we're just those kind of guys. We're just like best buds. And he tells me the story about his son. And the fact that his son went in the middle of the afternoon and lied down to take a nap, and that was it. And, I'm staring at a man who is my age, maybe 50, a little plus or minus a few years, who had to bury his son. And so, it's you tiptoe around those conversations, no matter how amazingly stable your friend might seem. But then he tells me a story that a few months later, one of his son's best friends in the entire world came to the house. And he apologized for coming to the house. And he says, "I don't want to make you feel bad or anything, but I have something I need to tell you." Now imagine this. I have already recorded on my show this story about my grandmother, I don't know, half a dozen times. You guys at one point probably heard it so much you wanted to puke, right? What's my buddy tell me? He tells me that this kid told him, he says, "I had a dream right after." He goes, "I didn't know your son had passed because it's summertime. We weren't hanging out at the time." And he goes, he was downtown at Huntington Beach. And he goes, "Your son was walking at me and he stopped me." And he said, "Hey, dude," I don't know what the guy's name was, but he said his name. And he goes, "I just want you to know I'm on the other side and I'm okay." That's what my buddy George told me to my face. And of course, my face lights up, and he doesn't know why, because he just told me this, gut-wrenching story. I said, "Dude," I said, I got a show, and I don't want you to necessarily watch or anything, waste your time, but I said, this is a thing. I said, those words are the words that they're told to say or that they're allowed to say, or for whatever reason in their plane of existence, those words are the magic words. Just like the words, "It's not your time, it's time to go back." So, in terms of your narrator's belief in the afterlife, it is absolute. Exactly what it is, I'm not sure, but his son didn't come to the friend, or my grandmother didn't come to me and go, she wasn't screaming and yelling and "Oh my God, I'm on your side, I'm so sorry," or whatever. It's all pleasant, it's all beautiful. The kid had relief that his best bud said goodbye in a way, and he's not really gone. There's actually a lot of other stories that the kid was a real prankster and a joker, and he has been pulling jokes on the family now since he's been gone. And George told me half a dozen things that are pretty much uncontestable pranks that this kid both did in real life when he was alive, and he's been pulling them on the family since he's been on the other side. So they've been privileged to see several different things. And he said, look, I'm the guy that doesn't believe any of this crap. He goes, now I completely believe. I am completely a changed man, which is awesome. When I write scripts and I have anything spiritual, I like to deal with an atheist character who has to earn his chops, because I think that's the best. That's the biggest arc you can have with the character, right? I also talked to, and I mentioned this kid the other day, a kid that took DMT a couple times. He's a 23-year-old kid, very, very smart. And he said that he was at the smoke lunch because his father had passed away a couple of years earlier, and that he and his father used to have a drink and smoke a cigar together. He's only 23. But his father was like us, very, very awake, taught his son a bunch of stuff, and so now he is very awake. It's really just, it's a great thing. It's a great trend that's happening out there, right? But he said he took DMT twice, and the way that he took it was through a bong hit with marijuana, and this yellow powder was sprinkled on top of the bowl, and he smoked through it, right? Now, I'm not saying do drugs, okay? But he smoked this stuff the first time. And this kid's a black kid. He's half French and half American. And he said, he looked at me kind of funny because he goes, I was in a wheat field. He goes, sort of like Russell Crowe in Gladiator. And he goes, except it's all color. And he says, I'm in just this infinite, wonderful wheat field. I'm running my hands through the wheat and I can feel it. And he says, all of a sudden, this white woman in a white dress, and he pauses and looks at me like, yeah, that's what she looked like, kind of came up to him, but he was too scared to say anything. And the trip was over before he gathered the courage to talk to her. So then he, either during the same day or at a different visit, and this is up in a cabin in like Vermont, in the middle of nowhere, Vermont or New Hampshire, one of the two. And he said the second time he dosed himself, and he put like 4 times as much, smoked through it. All of a sudden, he's at the exact same place, and this is what everyone says. They go to the same place, and the same, you might call them handlers, same friend, like your spirit person, your spirit being is on the other side. And the same woman was there, and he goes, this time, I immediately start talking to her. And he said that she told him, look, the universe is ours for the taking, so don't worry about anything. She said, if you have any questions, just ask them. And I will do my best to find the answer that you can understand. Basically, like I'm your mentor on the other side. Interesting, right? I had a very similar experience in, I would say, the overall gist of what was being said. And I want to preface this. When I listen to this back, I hate when I do digressions like this, but this is sort of important. When I read Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, and then Transformation, and then I can't remember his third book, I really thought I was listening to a guy that may have had an experience with a great alien and then really wanted it to happen multiple times. And so he's a writer. I think he's even won an Oscar. I don't know. But anyway, maybe not an Oscar, but he wrote Cat People, and he's a very celebrated guy in his era in the 80s. But I kept thinking he was pushing something to the point where like, oh yeah, you see aliens like every day now. Like you can't film these guys. You can't tell someone to come experience this with you. So at least we have 2 people. So I'm not trying to tell you a story because I got to be one of these guys too. Basically, there's a lot of those dudes in the world. But I told this story way before I met this kid. It's on the show. I woke up one day. It was a bright sunny day. And it's like summertime, and I have no pain in my body, like absolutely nothing, which is odd. It's like you don't know you have little aches and pains until they're all gone. And I start walking down the hallway, and I notice there's like this other consciousness sort of in my head. And the house was just beautifully lit, from all little windows around the house at my HB place. And this dude said, isn't it funny how they build homes to feel safe? And in my brain, I saw this little tiny cartoon version of the world, like almost claymation kind of thing, with this house that's so big on the side of the earth. It was like probably 1/5 the circumference of the earth, just bending on the earth, right? I'm looking at this going, and I was like, well, who the hell is this guy to be saying this? You know, it was like a male voice. And I said, well, who are you? And I don't know if I said it out loud or if I said it in my head. I honestly don't know. And this consciousness goes, oh, shit, like you can hear me. And it was a very pleasant experience. Like the guy was very polite. And then I end at the end of the hallway and I'm staring sort of at the wood floor. And I've got like a cabinet at the end of the hallway, which there's two cabinets where we keep all my electronic junk and then all the towels, right? And this dude goes, oh, no, it's great. It's great. He goes, it's like this. And all of a sudden a sphere that's transparent, like glass, comes from around my body. Like it's bigger than me. I could be standing in it, right? But then it shrinks down in front of me to about 10 inches. And he says, this is the whole universe. And it's amazing. You're going to love it, is what he says to me. And so the story ends with me going in the bathroom and skipping, brushing my teeth, jumping in the shower. And he looked at my hands with the water going over my hands. I didn't want to brush my teeth because I didn't want to shake them out of me, you know. And his last words were something to the effect of, it's been a long time since I've been in a body. And he was gone. Boom. Weirdest thing. Not a ghost experience. Not really a possession experience. Just another voice I could hear at that point, right? And I'm hearing voices. This is great, right? Nothing before like that. Nothing ever after like that. Ever. Without the identity of the being in front of me, right? These experiences change the way you perceive all the threats in this paradigm that we have that's Earth. Wherever we are, right? For everybody who, I mean, you guys know that I believe, if you listen to me, and it's no offense to people who have different beliefs, okay? I'd be more than happy to be totally shocked with your difference in beliefs. Believe me, I would just be laughing my butt off, slapping my knee, giving you a high five and a bro hug if you're a dude and a big hug if you're a chick. You know, I believe in expanding Earth because I think you can see it everywhere you go. I believe that the Atlantic spilled into the Pacific, and then you can see it in Indonesia on the bottom of Google Earth. Just go take a look, guys. I believe in ethereal sciences. I think that we are held together the same way a bubble's held together. I think planets birth out of the sun, and they're hard until they hit the asteroid belt, and they explode, and they turn into gas giants. I think you can see that. But let's just say, outside of being in some simulator, and a bunch of other stuff just being hoopla because we haven't been in space individually as citizens, and I certainly can't say I've seen the solar system, right? It's only in books and paperwork. It could all be BS. In fact, the maps of the Earth, I haven't personally flown the entire circumference of the Earth at every longitudinal level from south to north or north to south, so I don't even know if those are correct. I know that the Peter projection map is correct and all the globes in the world are wrong. I know that one's different. But when it comes right down to brass tacks, it doesn't really matter what the paradigm, aka cosmology that we're in, means to us unless, well, I would say if there are these other entities that are formerly human that can come back and talk to us. This individual in my hallway never said, hey, I'm your Uncle Bob. You remember me? You know, I didn't know I had an Uncle Bob. Well, you got a lot of explaining to do. It's in a previous life, you know, no identity whatsoever, just an experience. So I'm hearing this kid say stuff that's sort of similar, you know. It's like, hey, don't worry. The universe is ours for the taking. The tone of the way he said it was a very relieving thing, and I don't think he had any formal religious training of any kind. I'm sure he knows what's in the Bible and those kind of things, but he didn't seem to be any devout anything. He's a critical thinker. That's the cool thing about this kid. And his father was, and his father taught him to be one, and his mother's a genius too. So how would this affect you and I? Even if you subscribe for a second to what I'm saying, or you've had your own experiences like my buddy with his mother and the guy from Australia. I mean, talk about the odds against a second communication, or I say a first communication after death. Australia, pub, Guy who plays a really strange instrument. No, he never sold albums. He didn't sell tapes in the pub, but all of a sudden he finds out that, yeah, a long time ago when cassette tapes were a big thing, he did make an album. And this tape gets all the way to the East Coast, like I think it's North Carolina, and it gets dropped in a parking lot. A dude stubs his foot on it after his mother passes and then just hijacks his own show and says, I'm going to play the weirdest thing for, it's like Dr. Demento back in the late 70s, early 80s playing Devo for the first time, right? Or Weird Al Yankovic for the first time. Crazy, amazing statistics against. Me sitting in a bed, the only thing amazing about my grandmother telling me she had passed was I didn't know she was sick. I knew she was suffering from dementia, but I had no idea her physical body was in any expiration index or hospice. I didn't know. It still baffles me how I don't know that, but then that side of the family kind of doesn't talk to each other until something happens, right? It's strange. I think it changes everything. I think it changes sort of our caveman instincts to survive as a human being. I don't think we are here for a random reason. So I do believe that our lives are very important and that we are supposed to finish it to the best of our ability, because there's always a lesson after the one you just did, right? There's always a valley after a peak. There's always a peak after a valley, right? So good times will follow bad times. And sometimes bad times will follow good times, but they don't always go down as far as, they were. I know people that have lived charmed lives that are relatives of mine. But I think it also appeals to our more intellectual goals, which is, let's just say you dealt with the question at some point, what is your purpose in life? What is it? What are you here to do? Do you answer it specifically? I'm here to build cars. Very specific. Or do you go to a more metaphorical, thematic example, which is I'm here to help people. And building cars gets people from A to B. And building them right means they don't have to go in for maintenance a lot. So I'm putting my best foot forward. Is it sometimes just a spiritual end game, which is I am just trying to live a life when I stand before the giant eye of God and I have to judge myself that I'm good. I know I'm not perfect. I made mistakes. I even chose mistakes at various points in my life. But hopefully, in last few years of your life, you started choosing the right ones and perhaps acknowledged those mistakes to God, asked for a little forgiveness, even though he may not even feel like he needs to give you forgiveness. He's just, as long as you understand what you did and you got better, we all win. High five, right? And by the way, you're coming back. I've been thinking about it this way. I don't know about your area of the world, but when I was a kid in the 70s, and I know this was the case several decades before, probably even for hundreds of years before, I don't know if this happens anymore because no one eats at a table anymore. But when you ate at a table, especially at a family function like Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, some holiday dinner, they would have the kids' table and the adults' table. At the best case scenario, the kids' table was right next to the dinner, the parents' table. It was more like a cardboard, not cardboard, but a folding table. It's really low to the ground because we were tiny kids, right? So it was smaller chairs, but a lot of times they were in the other room. And mainly because the parents are like, okay, it's adult time in here. Not that we're going to talk about anything intense, but the kids don't understand what we're saying anyway, and they're in there laughing and screaming, throwing corn at each other's face, right? Now, I want you to conceive for 1 second that you actually, in your lifetime, have learned things. You've matured. All of us have. Maybe. The old theory of the universe is that we're on the back of a turtle, and when asked, what's the turtle standing on, the old woman says, it's turtles all the way down. Well, now imagine, instead of turtles, it's tables. And we are all at the table of this particular level of cosmology. Whatever instance of Earth you're in, maybe we're in the same one, because you can hear my voice, but maybe we're on different ones, who knows, right? We're earning our place at the other table. It's not punishment whatsoever. It's just, I mean, we'll put it this way. Let's say it's a great holiday dinner experience for the entire home, wherever this is happening. Some cabin out in the woods. It's gigantic, right? The adults come away from their dinner thinking, man, that was one of the best, most meaningful dinners we ever had. And the kids are like, man, that was the most fun we ever had. So both tables are considering themselves in their own dichotomy to be completely successful at whatever happened. They had the best time of their life, laughed, teared up, whatever was considered the best formula. It's not like one table is better than the other. It's just at a different level. And so perhaps we choose to be, based on our dedication within our life, whether we're going to go up a table, stay at the same table, or maybe go down a table, maybe go down several tables. Again, relatively speaking, at the table that you're at, it still could be wonderful. I'm sure that even in the most horrid prison in the world, there's at least one day out of the whole year where all the inmates go back to their cells and they're like, well, you know what? At least no one got poked. Nobody, no one had bad vibes. It seemed to just kind of everyone followed the code and we got back okay. But now another thing I've talked about in several episodes way in the past that I think applies here is, do we pick the table that we're at almost every day? And can we shift our tables dynamically within a 24-hour period? Sometimes you're eating from a good table because you just really got your game tight. And other times, you fall. And so, you're, like we have definitely a meth problem in California right now, of course. Maybe they were eating at a really amazing table 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and something happened. Now they're eating at a different table. It's still of their peers now because everyone at the table is doing meth. Unless they're high, they think the table might suck. But if they're high, they may not even notice, right? It distorted the body. The soul is attached to the body, trying to create a state of mind, the thing that sort of feels like it's in your head, right? That's why drugs are something that we have to be extremely careful with. We're messing with the chemistry of the human body intentionally. Now, it could be argued that the world provides hallucinogenic mushrooms and a bunch of other stuff. Well, maybe, yeah, you find some peyote and you chew it up and, if it doesn't need any preparation of any kind and you eat it and it gives you a hallucination, maybe that one could be construed as a gateway drug from God to you if you so choose to consume it, or you're so curious you actually ate something that could maybe kill you if it was the wrong type of mushroom. But if you take something and you have to synthesize it, I'm not afraid of LSD if it's the real stuff, but it's not, I don't think it's normal. It's made from fungus from a rye bread and then it's reduced and all this other stuff. I don't know if you can eat rye bread with fungus on it and all of a sudden trip balls. I don't know. And I'm not saying it's a sin or something. I'm just saying, look, you have free choice to do with what you want with your body. A lot of fermented liquids are consumed every day. And the liver has to process fermented liquid twice. And when it does it, it's starving the liver of oxygen. Therefore, your cells in your liver die in the process. Your liver's pretty amazing and resilient and will grow giant segments of it back as long as you don't do it too often. But as we know from all the baseball greats from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, these dudes had heart or liver transplants like most people would, replace their t-shirt. Now, I also want to throw something at you along this line of discussion that has puzzled me for years, and I, for whatever reason, in thinking about it, however many tens of thousands of times and some micro thoughts along commutes of mine and whatever. There's the question of why would one person have their grandmother come and say goodbye to them, and why wouldn't everyone have that experience? There's a lot of people who lose people that are devastated by the loss. And what I have found, and this is even in my own travels in this world, from either people I know that have passed or a celebrity I followed really, really closely, like Prince or someone passing. I've never had any, experience where I ever thought they came back or something like that. And here's my new thinking along those lines, because it was said that Houdini promised his wife that if there was any chance whatsoever of him coming back and signaling that there is an afterlife, that he was going to do that with his wife. And as far as I heard the story, and correct me if I'm wrong, nothing ever happened. But he died in a tragic accident, right? I think that there might be, it's going to be difficult for me to put this into accurate words, but the way I'm going to describe this, I'll describe this 4 or 5 times to see if I can't get the words right? When your reaction to a death is more on the side of incidental information than it is devastation. And this does not factor into your love for that person. You could be absolutely, totally in love with that person. I mean, my grandmothers were my mothers. They're totally different women, both of them. But with the two of them together, they were yin and yang. My grandfather was an amazing man too. One of them was passed before I got past the age of 1. But the grandmother that came to me, her telling me was not me running out in the front room and going, oh my God. I didn't make a phone call to find out if she was telling me the truth. And honestly, whether or not I believed her was still in question. It was just this thing. And this is kind of what's really strange. There's almost a paralytic brainwave that happens where you're getting information and you're hearing it, but you don't process it until either a few minutes later or a few hours later. And you're like, oh my gosh, that was real. I just thought it was something weird that happened to me, right? So if you lost someone and you're like, oh my gosh, this was horrible, this was quick, whatever it is, and I really, really could use the visit from that other person very specifically in the form of an apparition, or even if it's in your mind's eye, no one else could see it in the person in the room, or speak to me, or something. A lot of people, I think, almost categorically say they feel the people around them, as long as they're open to that scenario. If you don't believe in the afterlife, of course, it would be really amazing if you had an experience to change your mind. I've never thought that was the case. I just kind of thought they're on the other side, and there's just no way that they can participate at that vocal level, that visual level. I always have my mind open when I'm writing a script, and I might even say, hey, Rod Serling, what would you do? And I'll sit and I'll quiet my mind and see if something comes. And sometimes amazing things come. Could be me doing it. Could be someone, it's not even him. Someone goes like Charles Beaumont goes, hey dude, I'm not Rod, but here's what you're looking for. Boom. Who knows? That's all just speculation and fun. So if you've wondered why, you've really desired this experience, I want you to study that algorithm. How devastated were you when the individual you're calling upon passed? And if any of you've had that experience in the setting of devastation, but you're like, no, my grandfather came to me when I was devastated, I want you to study your intellect and your ability to process that in a very productive way and not a panicky way, because I'm thinking that just it's human. I mean, if you went to the other side, for instance, and you're like, gosh, I'd really like to tell my wife that I'm on the other side and that I'm okay, but I think it might cause more problems than solutions, then you could understand why they might pull back. It might come back a much later time, or they come back and you're just doing so well, even though you're still hurting, they don't say anything because they're like, well, they're, relative to time in the other realm, this person's going to be with me in no time flat, and we'll hug it out then. I'll even be there right when they pass, so that it's like, boom, honey, I'm here, right? Whether or not we're married in heaven, I don't know. That's where things get complicated with reincarnation theories. But I still believe that's true. I just don't know how it works. Maybe we're constantly marrying the same people. Who knows? It's like Groundhog Day, right? But I will say that, and I'm going to tell my Walt Disney story again. I was reading, I read two two autobiographies. Well, I shouldn't say that. I read an autobiography on Walt Disney by the Disney company. I also had met Bob Gurr, the last Imagineer he hired in 54, who ended up being a propulsions engineer for everything made of water. So the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was his, and the submarine ride was his. He did a bunch of other stuff too. So, and I also read the book Disney Wars, which is all about the CEOs that came after Walt and how they either succeeded or failed in creating movie after movie that was amazing, or junk movies, et cetera, which is currently the era we're in now. I wouldn't blame the current CEO, because the stuff that's coming out now was all in the pipeline when he decided to come back and take it over. And what the Disney enterprise is today and what it was back then is two completely different things. Okay. The reason why I'm telling you this is that Walt was on my mind, big time. I had a video game company. I was trying to really channel his instincts for a bunch of projects we were in. I think it very successfully executed, but it was really just me surrounding myself with his imagery, learning about how he did things, how he created USC to create more artists because he was running out of them. And so when I went to Disneyland, I guess I don't even know how many weeks after, couldn't be more than 3 weeks after meeting Bob Gurr face to face and having a very detailed conversation with him about Walt. I'm standing there. My girlfriend went to the bathroom, at a cast bathroom that no one knew about. It's nice and clean. I'm just standing there with my sunglasses on. Probably the ones that you know me by. I got new ones now, but I'm just staring straight ahead. And Walt walks up to me. And from all the photographs I've ever seen of Walt and his stature, like his weight gain, which was very light over, 30 years, I would say he looked like he was in the late 20s, because he was born in 1901, but like the late 20s or early 30s. And he had a cigarette in his hand. He had a cigarette, I believe, in his right hand. And he said to me, he goes, "Bob Gurr's over there. You should go say hi to him." Now, what I've never said is, that's not a phrase I ever say myself. I never say those two things. So-and-so's over there, you should go say hi to him. It's not the way I choose to say those statements. So that's something else that's kind of filtered into my mind since I originally told you the story. Those are someone else's words. I just don't talk like that. So at that point, he walks to my left. It's all in my mind's eye. I know that no one else can see this guy. It's just apparent, right? Now he lived, in the fire department apartment above the fire station, which is a faux fire station as I understand it. But that's no more than 200 yards from me. So this circle is something he knows. Plus, he just lived at the park. He made sure everything was perfect. And who knows, maybe getting away from the wife and kids was a little oasis for him. But he had a lot of pressure to grow every single area of the park, make sure everything was safe. So hanging out and monitoring it might be what any one of us would do with that much pressure. Who makes an amusement park by themselves? Not that many people. Where you're the dude the buck stops with. Six Flags? Well, one person was responsible for Six Flags. Nobody. And for those of you in Europe, that's a giant chain we have over here. So my girlfriend comes out of the bathroom, and as I always tell the story, you have to understand, we were hangry. So we were angry and hungry, and we had chosen to eat at the Kraft's Mexican restaurant in Frontierland, which at the time served the best barbecue ribs in the entire Orange County area. So we're walking down Main Street. You guys have seen it. You guys have been there. No matter if you've been in a different version of Disneyland, you know what it looks like. And we get to the end, and we're supposed to break left past Adventureland and go to Frontierland. And the Kraft's Mexican restaurant, you can see it in the door. If you just look, you can see it's how close it is. It's just walk in the door, go to the right. And so I told her, I said, let's go this way first. And she said, okay. Now, she wouldn't hesitate to tell me to go jump off a cliff if she's hungry, and we're both hungry. Now to the right, it's Tomorrowland. There's two rides over there we ride, and she hates all the food over there, and so it would be the Star Tours or it would be Space Mountain. Star Tours minimum wait 45 minutes. Space Mountain, you're talking about an hour plus. This is 2007. Okay. So I take her that direction, but this beacon is in my head. This freaking pin is in my head. I can't see it. I can feel it. It's like it's nagging my skull. Crazy, right? So I brake. For those of you familiar with Disneyland, or you just want to get a map and take a look, I went past the Moonburger joint, which I actually like the food there. And Matterhorn's right behind that. And I do not like Matterhorn. Now, all the other rides past Tomorrowland in this area are all kiddie rides. It's a small world after all. At the very end, it has Autotopia, which I love. I love entertaining kids at Disneyland, but I didn't have any with me. We're walking down this little pathway, and there's Bob Gurr with his best bud standing right in front of me in this, I don't know if you know, but at that area, the passageway is at least 20, 30 feet wide. It's a huge area to walk in. He's just standing there. I'm looking right at him. So now I know I know that this was real. So I walk up to him and he says, I said, like, Bob, hey, you remember me? And he's like, yeah, he was good. I said, what are you doing there? And he goes, oh, it's my birthday. I went mountain biking. And he goes, by the way, he says that to me. And I said, well, what are you doing here? Like, he's 76 years old at Disneyland. I mean, I know he participated in the creation of the park, but he does have a kid's heart. Let me tell you, he's a really sweet guy. And he said, it's Imagineering Day. And he showed me this little button on his lapel. And he says, you're going to notice these buttons all over the park. And he points up at the ride that was the submarine ride, which is now Finding Nemo. It isn't open to the public yet, but there's a gigantic line waiting. He says, see all those people up there? He goes, they're all Imagineers. But I'm the first guy to ride on the ride because I helped do the propulsion system. I said, that's awesome. No sooner than we get done talking, a cast member comes down the ramp because you have to load high because you're going into a water tank. She comes down and she says, Mr. Gurr, we're ready. See you later. Boom. So then I start doing this show. I start telling you guys the story over and over and over. I then call my buddy Sid and I said, do you have Bob Gurr's phone number? And he said, yeah, sure. Without even asking. Call up Bob. I'll leave a voicemail. I said, Bob, you don't remember me, but, you know, there's something I have to tell you about the day that the Finding Nemo ride happened, and you may not believe me, but I just got to tell you. So within the hour, he calls me back. And, of course, he doesn't remember me, but he's very polite. And I explained the whole thing to him. And he just goes quiet on the phone for a beat in the script. And he goes, you know what? He goes, that doesn't surprise me at all. And I completely believe you. And he says, what you don't know is, he said, did you just tell me that you and your girlfriend decided to use your season pass to come eat dinner? And I said, yeah. And he goes, so where do you live? And I said, Huntington Beach. And he goes, so he's doing the math in his head. And he goes, you know what? If you subtract the time that it took you to make that decision in your house, get ready, get in your car and come over, park, get into the ride and meet me there. He goes, if you reverse that timetable, he goes, do you realize that's the moment the ride broke down? I said, what? He goes, yeah, the ride was perfectly fine. And then it just, right when I was about to get on the ride, it broke. And she goes, my buddy and I went and rode Matterhorn. And he goes, that's why you found us standing in the middle of the street. And so then he tells me 3 or 4 other stories about seeing things at Disneyland, and that all the employees have seen things, including the amazing video of a character walking out of the Haunted Mansion through New Orleans and across the water towards the steamboat. If you haven't seen that little footage on YouTube, my buddy worked that night, worked for security, that went all over the radios, and everyone ran in, and no one has claimed that as a hoax. Which, I mean, it's been 10 years. I mean, come on. If that was a hoax, that was absolutely ingenious. And it didn't cause World War III, so you didn't hurt the park at all if you created a hoax. So if you know if anyone admitting to that being a hoax, please put it in the comments section, because I do not know of a single person I talked to. Really, I talked to one guy with the guy standing next to him who worked that night, who got pulled in to look at the photos or the movies of this happening live. But anyway, those experiences, in part, are the reasons why I think there's most definitely this layer on the other side. And I have to say, even having those experiences, I didn't intellectually think about maybe how that's affecting me personally and my goals in life. Because we have this, I think it's a beautiful thing that human beings want to exist through through thick and thin, right? We're willing to fight to stay alive, and all these movies that you see, which some of them are utter fiction, but I think a lot of them are based on, I think, real events where individuals will be given an option, hey, if you don't do this, I'll kill you, and they go off and do something horrible because, well, I don't want to die. You have this self-preservation circuit in your system, right? Now, for those of you that might have reflected on, well, maybe we're in an artificial reality, we're in some artificial intelligence. Maybe we are, quite frankly, artificial intelligences. However, just like the Star Trek episode with Moriarty, they ended up giving this fictional character in a hologram, in a holodeck experience, his own rights, so that he wasn't murdered because of some things that he did and because of what he wanted to. He just wanted. I want to ruin it for you, but it's like one of the best episodes of Star Trek. I think it was with Data, I believe. So it must have been Next Generation. It was amazing. This guy plays Moriarty, and then 4 years later they bring him back to play one more episode, and it was Data, because Data is Sherlock Holmes. But it was just an amazing episode. But they gave this being kind of inalienable rights, like a human being. So if we struggle with that here, because in this cosmology, because we have flesh and bone and blood and all the spectrums of emotion that exceed the five senses that we're told that we're limited to, which is just such a joke, right? We are the most intense machine in the universe. Just because scientists can't sense it as a photon or electron, then you can go into whatever quark world you want to go. They say it doesn't exist, and it's just their way of saying, well, as dumb as I am today makes me the most incredible expert in the universe, right? Isn't that funny? Because I have limited the paradigm of my thought. Because perhaps I don't have as much critical thought as the average 8-year-old kid who's being raised properly. I'm the genius and the kid's the idiot. And you'll see, once your kid goes to my institutions, we'll close down that kid's brain and he'll be as dumb as we are. But then we'll decorate him with little PhD pieces of paper. He will accomplish nothing in his lifetime except to do what he's told. And he'll feel like he's amazing because he did those things, right? He or she, right? I'm going to give the girls a little more credit to push through, right? Be more abstract. But I don't think it matters, let's just say, if we're in some combination of a artificial intelligence reality, whether we be sort of binary hosts, right? So we're hosts like Westworld. You might call us androids if there were truly organic beings and we are this other thing. But perhaps we're all some construct. But it's been respected in this cosmology because that still is intelligence. It's self-preservation. It gets more educated. It's a dog, for instance. If you got a little puppy, cute little puppy, it will get better usually over time, and it will learn how to sit and respond to its name and do things and poop outside and all that good stuff. And that's good. It's a little tiny arc in the mind of the little love bug that is a dog, right? But if you have a child and you don't medicate their brain out of existence in an 18-month regimen and turn them into autistic kids, as long as you don't do that, okay, they will continue to draw reality, right? First, it's the potato head with the 4 limbs, as far as little sticks coming out of the potato, right? And then you learn that there's a body, and they draw a little body on the bottom, and they put the sticks down there, but there's a little tiny body and a gigantic head. Because that's how they see things, because they're closer to your face, right? They can't really conceive of the body as much. And then when they get older and they take some art classes, oh my God, they're cranking it out like Michelangelo, right? So we show this amazing ability and this amazing progress. It's funny too, because we will often say things like, well, if there is an afterlife and well, let's just say there's some form of reincarnation. Afterlife is sort of the green room in between your existence and your instantiations of whatever you're going to be, right? I have definitely said, what if there's a state of being that we can't even conceive of? A lot of people take DMT, say they see creatures of light. They're souls that are just pure light swimming in the universe, right? And we say those things, and people who've seen those things via DMT, like Joe Rogan talked about it, Graham Hancock talked about it, et cetera, right? It's okay to say that, but if you say, well, you want to be that right now? Oh, no, no, I don't. I'm good. I'm a human being. I dig this. I dig touching my fingers together and feeling that little texture of my fingerprints. Okay. But if you were that other thing, what if in one reality you technically have this body, and in the other reality you're a synthesis of the body? Would you even know the difference? And would it matter? Because what are you really? What if you're just this collection of intelligence that is your soul? What would it matter if you're a Toyota Corolla or if you're a human being? If you're male, if you're female, if you're tall or you're short, if you're made of light or made of binary bits or some other method of counting. What if you're spinning phosphorus atoms in a quantum computer? What difference would it make as long as you have what you have right now, which is some semblance of a mind? Whatever form you are mixes with your soul, and you have a state of consciousness in the center. I think, therefore I am, is the result. The first HAL 9000 poem you read to yourself. You could sense you exist. And if someone challenges that you exist, you fall back on that Occam's razor statement to say, no, I'm here, man. I don't know if I'm simulated or not, but it really doesn't matter. I cry, I feel pain, I feel pleasure, I laugh, I love. And there you go. You got the basic food groups of God. What I'm getting at in my own life is that I am definitely committed to living, okay? Especially if anybody bumps me off or anything like Rosa Corey had happened to her, unfortunately. I'm in good health. I have been scanned from my top of my head to the bottom of my crotch. My cholesterol, my arteries is in the top 1%. I have congenitally great undulation of my arteries. I have no brain problems, no issues, okay? So I'm committed to living because I think that this has been created for this journey. Now, if for some reason there's a selection process and a chick cuts me off on the highway and I don't catch it and I spin and crush my skull, well, I'm okay. I mean, it'll just happen quickly, But I know I'll be in good hands. I know I'll be in this circular cosmology that is our existence. And I know that what I really am didn't die at all. It just transformed. And I do know that every day, because my buddy Sid said this to me, and he was quoting another man. He said, so-and-so said, one of the most courageous things a man could do is get old. And Sid went through some things. He went through some health issues and stuff, but he lived to be 86. But yeah, every day that you fight to stay alive, you as a human being, unless you're some miraculous Superman, you're getting your little aches and pains, and you don't work out like you did when you were 20. Even if you do, you don't quite feel the same way, even though you might look good. So you're biting off this journey to understand the pleasure and pain thresholds of what it means to be in existence, so that you can appreciate the good times when you're stuck in the bad times. It is amazing that one of the most constant lessons of this realm of existence is that peaks and valley comment. And I'll tell you how I ran into this statement. I had something happen to me where I had 850 credit and could get anything I wanted. I mean, I had no debt. It was incredible. And then there was a person I was relying on in my lifetime. I took a financial risk, and I got to a point where I had, I think, 580 credit. But my car was dying, and I tried to go down and buy a new car. And it was like that Simpsons episode where they Coleman went trying to buy a car, and the red alarm goes off on top of the computer. And he goes, "Is that a good red light?" He says, "You ever known a red light to mean good, But this dude, he was very cool with me. He leans back in his chair. I hadn't quite started my game company at the time, but he leans back in his chair, and he says, and the person who was responsible for this was with me. That was very educational. Perhaps that's where the lesson needed to be. And he said, well, his dad told me, he goes, there's peaks and valleys. And he says, it looks like you're in a valley right now, but he goes, don't worry, a peak's coming. You'll be all right. This guy didn't know me from anything. The funny thing was, a year later, I was a year deep into my game company, fully exploding, waking up every day. Just as soon as the sun came up, I'm popping out, and I'm excited to do everything that's going on. I'm running the company. I'm running it well. I'm running it the way that the best bosses I'd ever had run the departments I had been in. And if that dude, if anybody said, oh, you know what, you can't even buy a car right now. You can't even finance a car right now. Okay. But in a year from now, you will be literally halfway to paying cash for your next car. And a year later, I paid cash for my car. It's $24,000, but it was like, here, I own this car. See you later. Got horrible service after I gave him the check for the whole thing. But that's you, that's me. And I think that's sort of the frequency of the archetype within our scripts. It just happens that way. And if this life ends being really bad and really tough, and of course, when you're dying, you can't really construe, this is great. I have the rattle cough. This is awesome. Yeah, it's hard to construe the moment of death as being some big positive win. But in the end, I think based on all of the, I just want you to know I'm on the other side and I'm okay. Based on all those experiences, I think that we're just fine on the other side. It doesn't mean that's your goal to punch out early or any of that kind of stuff. As long as you keep going, keep persevering. And I hate to say it, but if you're willing to experience the pain of discipline, then the pleasure of your success is just right around the corner. I know it sounds a little cliche, but I have been listening to some people that I had about 5 years ago. I found some really great mentors online. I think one of the guys is a former prisoner. His name's Wes Weston. He's this really monster huge white guy out of San Diego. But he makes a living now. He's went to prison. I don't know how long he went to prison for. It was a pretty good stay. Realized what he did was dumb. Immediately applied himself within the system. And of course he had to live that life in the system, which he regrets. But now he's a very nonviolent person. He talks to you like I like to be talked to, which is like he's a drill sergeant. Drill sergeants are awesome because they don't mess around. They get you from point A to point B. What do you want to do? You want to listen to a big poem about how you should get your life together, or have a dude just go, knock that off. That is not your best work. Do this. And he's not really talking to you. It's a video on YouTube. But if you want to find a guy online that will get you straightened out, he's all about the physical body. He personally believes if your physical body isn't the best, you can make it with whatever you got, right? You might have some lemons. You got to make some lemonade. That's all right. But he said, just be your best, because that's where you can look in the mirror and get everything that you want, because you start feeling the fact that success and you are a thing. You're actually dating, and maybe you even tied the knot at some point. Doesn't mean he doesn't have valleys, but he said, he said a few things. He said, once you've been in the pen, he says, when you get out and you see, he says, people will still come up to him and try to throw down, or, they see how big he is and they just get threatened and they try to lip off to him. He says, I'm with my kid, I'm with my wife, whatever. He goes, I've been in the pen. He goes, there's nothing this dude can say to me that makes me think I need to respond in a way that will get me back in there, because it just gets worse and worse the more you go in, right? And that's inspiring to us that don't need to commit any crimes of any kind, but we still get motivated, if someone disrespects you and that kind of stuff. It's just not worth it. You might envision it in your head, what you would do, but it's just not worth it. Don't get yourself in situations where you got to be challenged like that idiotically. Don't go to a bar and stay there till it closes and expect when you walk out in a parking lot, there won't be some punk-ass bitch running his mouth at you. It's going to happen. I live next to a bar. I hear it all the time. Thank God they don't throw down, but maybe 1 in 100 times, and it's just some little spat, and then they get in their cars and they leave. Thank God, right? I'm going to wager, okay, since I believe your soul's been around forever, since souls are created, that you're special because you haven't been dismissed from the experiment. If you want to believe in just the human genealogy that you have, I don't care what race you are, what sex you are. Your family line has survived every single challenge that humankind has had to endure since our drop off by aliens or our utter creation by God. We have survived all of this. And even with stories of the visitation of Christ himself, he didn't walk around, solving all the problems of everybody. Most of us, 99.99999% of the world, had to continue with leprosy and with whatever problems we had. He didn't, epilepsy or something like that. Even if you believe every story of that guy, God is still having most of us live through our lives, even if you believe that story. And that's a wonderful thing. That's us, right? So your genes, whether they are currently in a TikTok loop, your kids are like really disappointing you because you're like, oh my God, I'm not sure my generation or this family line is going to make it. And I suppose that happens, but we're souls. We detach and reborn, and we'll have more chances at different things. But the soul level, I believe, has that because your soul still exists. Whatever your soul's gone through, it's gone through everything, and it's still here. As a human being, you're the descendants of the most successful lottery winners in history. Plagues, wars, famines, cataclysms of biblical proportions, the floods, all this kind of stuff. You're still here. And that's because inside of you, you got everything you need. You got the Swiss Army knife in you. You may not know you got the little pliers off to the side, and you have a nut that needs to be turned. Just have faith in yourself to the point of like, I wouldn't even be here if I wasn't a kick-ass person. It's mathematical. You want to be an atheist? You want to be, there's no God and there's no, well, fine. Then you're still subject to what I'm saying. You're 100% correct. By the way, you don't need any medicines, by the way, if you believe in evolution, because you were built to be perfectly imbalanced with the world, and you do not need pharmaceutical companies to tell you how to live your life. So that's something you have to eat, too, if you're a big atheist evolutionary person. Just saying. Anyway, I will be back on camera shortly, so I'll make that commitment to you guys. I have a little 2-day vacation I'm going to take here shortly for 4th of July. I'll be back in action. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. Everything's up there. There are some episodes occurring on Rumble and BitChute that don't happen on YouTube. So if you want a little bonus and you don't go over to those other services, get on the website. They're over there. If you subscribe to the podcast, you get it all. Feel free to spread it. We've had a surge in membership. And just as YouTube reported the membership surge, about every hour on the hour, they've knocked someone off the channel. So check to see if you're subscribed as well. And if you have multiple accounts, let's piss them off. Get all your multiple accounts subscribed to Deep Thoughts Radio. Even if you could sneak on your mom's phone or your dad's phone or your friend's phone, subscribe. Just piss them off. Get the algorithm going up, and let's force their hand to show that they kick people off. I think that'd be great. To the Patreon, PayPal folks, thank you so much. Again, if you are a contributor on PayPal or Patreon, or really Patreon, I can't get back to you much on PayPal. You get episodes the second they drop. The audio, once the audio file is mastered, you get it. So if that appeals to you, go for it. And you get little updates from me on the side. Anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over and out.